It's time for Forward Nation Radio. Now here he is, the host of Forward Nation Radio, David Leventhal.
The Wall Street Journal gets a new executive editor after its news reporting staff argued that the old one was too pro-Trump. Too pro-Trump? A Rupert Murdoch media property? No, that's not possible. Anyway, welcome to Forward Nation Radio, where we are decidedly not pro-Trump. Nor am I, David Leventhal, your host. On today's Forward Nation Radio, the Supreme Court proves that crime pays, immigration, and Mr. Bean takes his wrecking ball around the world. But first, I am frequently asked by students and by listeners, if Trump were to do something right, would you give him credit for it? And I've always said, hypothetically speaking, because it's always been hypothetical, absolutely. I would be happy to give him credit if he got something right. Well, this is 2 weeks in a row. We're starting a trend. Donald Trump did something right. The Kim Summit, the historic Kim Summit, has already paid dividends. After meeting with Kim, Donald Trump has issued or commuted the life sentence of Alice Marie Johnson, who was serving a life without possibility of parole sentence for a nonviolent first-time drug offense. Wait, you thought I meant the other Kim Summit? Yeah, no good came out of that, but we'll be talking about that later. This is the one with not the very honorable person. This is the summit that he actually prepared for by taking his Viagra. We are reminded through this story, the commutation of Ms. Johnson's life sentence, that a lot of people in this country are getting sentenced to life imprisonment for nonviolent offenses. We were reminded, in this case, of a woman who'd already served more than 20 years, a grandmother, who had a mandatory life sentence, that 3,200 plus of her fellow citizens are serving life without the possibility of parole for nonviolent offenses. According to the ACLU, 65% of those are black. And a secret, it's not because they commit more crimes. 79% of those are for nonviolent drug arrests. 83% had the life sentence be mandatory. More than 17,000 people in this country are currently serving life sentences. We have a very serious problem with incarceration. We were reminded when Trump did the right thing and pardoned Ms. Johnson that Obama had denied her a pardon. And yes, it's true that Obama denied her a pardon in large part because the conservative media sphere and the conservative base would have gone absolutely ballistic if Obama had pardoned a criminal like that. There's no excuse. He should have done it. He should have done it with thousands more, as should Trump. Still, while we're patting ourselves on the back or patting Trump on the back, we're reminded that this is not the way to enact criminal justice reform. The whole king thing doesn't really work for most of our incarcerated and incarcerated unfairly citizens. For sentencing reform, backed by none other than the lunatic Koch brothers and other extreme right-wing jackasses. And in fact, one can argue that if Hillary Clinton had been elected president of the United States, we would already have enacted serious sentencing reform. Instead, we've got Congress looking at a weak Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act because we're reminded the lunatics are running the asylum. Anyway, now back to our regularly scheduled program about all the crap that Trump is doing to destroy the planet. Republican electoral prospects improved this week. Oh great, downer already. How did Republican electoral prospects improve? Well, first of all, moderates were defeated. Now, when you refer to Republican moderates, of course, we're reminded of false equivalence. Watch. In the Republican Party, a moderate means you cover your swastika. But okay, Paul Ryan is a moderate. Mitch McConnell is a moderate. You know, Paul Ryan, the guy who's the Ayn Rand disciple, that's the moderate in the Republican Party. And yet, they proved to be too moderate for the Republican voter. This week we've seen the moderates, quote unquote, beaten back when they tried to pass sensible immigration reform in the United States Congress. They lost out to the people who just want to demonize immigrants and brown-skinned people and keep them out. We've seen the nomination of right-wing candidates across America, like Corey Stewart, met a Confederate monument he doesn't like, or an immigrant he does. No, this is clearly Donald Trump's party at this point. Recent poll had his approval ratings within the Republican Party at 85%. Donald Trump, 85%. Ronald Reagan, at this point in presidency, you know, Ronald Reagan, the god of the Republican Party, was at 75% at this point in his presidency. So, false equivalency watch. Both parties moving to the extremes, David Brooks, and others. The primaries say otherwise. Bills say otherwise. Got to listen to Bret Stephens. The New York Times created controversy among much of their liberal readership when they made Bret Stephens part of their opinion staff. Bret Stephens, a longtime conservative Republican, who was, among other things, a climate change skeptic. Bret Stephens now says he voted for Hillary, he will vote for Democrats, as long as the Republican Party is taking its cues from the fascist parties of Europe. This is not me. This is a conservative Republican saying, Republican Party, fascists. Think about that for just a moment, and then we're moving on. But also, Republicans did a lot to improve their electoral prospects with the Supreme Court by a 5-4 majority, and who could have seen that one coming, gave its imprimatur to Ohio's aggressive voter purge. Ohio has purged 2 million voters since 2011. What was the size of Donald Trump's victory in Ohio again? A lot less. The 3 largest counties where they had statistics, 2 times as many blacks were excluded as whites, despite making up a minority of the population. The Supreme Court opinion says that this is a reasonable effort to prevent voter fraud. You know, that thing that doesn't exist. That thing that Donald Trump created a bullshit voting electoral integrity commission to prove and had to disband because they couldn't even make crap up well enough. The guy who was on the Supreme Court because Republicans stole the seat. Republicans right now are clapping themselves on the back, saying that's why we stole the seat. So we could continue to steal elections and steal more seats and steal more elections and steal more seats. Isn't this wonderful? Aren't you so proud to be an American right now? Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor sure is. She issued a blistering dissent, pointing out how this undermines the whole purpose of the National Voter Registration Act, which was designed to remove the lingering remnants of Jim Crow. Jim Crow, or as Trump supporters put it, the good old days. This is why they stole the seat for Neil Gorsuch. I happened to be explaining in class the other day a little bit of the pedigree of our latest Supreme Court justice who got his position because of blatant theft. Neil Gorsuch's mommy used to run, and Gorsuch, ran the EPA under Ronald Reagan until she was forced to resign after being held in contempt of Congress for refusing to share documents that Congress demanded, showing how much in bed with industry she was in helping them destroy the planet for free. Go us! Her son is now elevated to the United States Supreme Court. It just gets crazier and crazier. Maybe the media could talk a little bit about whether democracy matters at all in the United States of America. Anyway, there was better election news this week. Better for people who care about America, not so much for Republicans. And that is an issue that we have talked about on this show. I almost did it. We've talked about on this show before. And that is something called instant runoff, or now being called ranked choice elections, which is something that should be implemented nationwide, as we called for in this show over a year ago. Instant runoff elections, which allows people to rank their choices of candidates, allows for more third-party candidates, requires more moderation in a winning candidate, and would absolutely prevent people like Donald Trump from winning elections in America. You should be demanding in your state and your municipality. The state of Maine had an election that used instant runoff election. Several cities around America, including San Francisco, used this process. And if we do this, we fix a lot of voting problems in America, and we allow third-party candidates to run without throwing elections to people like Donald Trump. Immigration has been in the news a lot, and I want to touch upon that, even though we expect to explore this more deeply next week with a special guest. Jeff Sessions, our beloved Attorney General, has changed our refugee policy. People who are fleeing domestic violence or gang violence, who fear for their lives for either of those reasons, will no longer be given refugee status in the United States of America. Oh, back to the good old days when we didn't let refugees in, which is why the movie Voyage of the Damned was the feel-good story of the decade whenever it came out. Voyage of the Damned, of course, about America turning away Jewish refugees during the Nazi era from Europe and sending them back to Europe. Also in the news on immigration, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement has been boarding buses and trains and asking for papers and arresting people who look brown and don't have the right papers. Sounding familiar, anybody? Maybe Bret Stephens was right. Maybe Hannah Arendt was right when, in the wake of World War II, speaking of Nazi criminals, particularly Adolf Eichmann, she pointed out the banality of evil. Evil doesn't necessarily look like Simon LeGroux. It might look like a garden gnome. That's Jeff Sessions. Anyway, Mr. Bean, he missed his meeting with what used to be his former buddy, Emmanuel Macron of France. He also missed the talks on climate, clean energy, and oceans. That's okay. It's not like Trump cares about climate, clean energy, or oceans. So why be at the meetings? He missed the statement on women's empowerment. Though he had to show up for that meeting, I guess it really would have looked bad if Donald Trump didn't show up for the women's empowerment meeting. But of course, it would have looked just as bad if he did show up for the statement on women's empowerment, our pussy grabber in chief. Ironic a little bit there. And to lobby against all of our erstwhile allies, leading Emmanuel Macron to point out that these 6 countries represent values. 6. Anybody want to guess who he was leaving out? Well, that's okay, because while he was there, he was knowledge-free anyway. Typical Trump. And he had nothing to add. As Trump pointed out about the meeting in the United States, we're like a piggy bank that everyone is robbing. Which really would be a good line if there were any truth to it. Of course, what really upsets Trump is he doesn't want to share. He and his friends have been robbing America since he took the presidency. He doesn't want to have to share with anybody else. That seems awful. That's the way he rolls. Why would he meet with people who, when he lied to them, said, "But Mr. President, that's not true, and we know it. We don't watch Fox News." So he left in a huff without signing the statement from the meeting, and then running away. After trying to destroy the Western Alliance, he started firing off angry tweets, picking fights with, among others, the dishonest and weak Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. Yes, Donald Trump once again exhibiting the characteristics of the cowardly bully that he comically so exemplifies. He picks a fight and he turns around and runs. We had his trade expert, Peter Navarro, go on and say there is a special place in hell for Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. I'm showing my age there for a moment. Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. A special place in hell? Seriously? You're in the Trump administration, and you have finally found the place in hell?
Yeah,
seriously?
A leader standing up for their country is now a hell-worthy...
Standing up for the planet, standing up for civilization, standing up for democracy and the Western Alliance. That is what puts you in hell. Being beholden to a Russian dictator and kissing the ass of another dictator, in fact, every dictator that comes your way, we call that diplomacy, Trump style. Did you see Trump saying this is going to cost the people of Canada a lot of money regarding Trudeau's criticism? He's threatening to break their legs. He is basically threatening to break the legs of the people of Canada. This is the goon in chief. Shouldn't he be having Michael Cohen say this stuff to them? It's insane. The man is insane. He is an affront to everything about the... He is a petulant little baby. No, another shout out to Bill Maher, who over a year ago put it most succinctly. He is a whiny little bitch. A whiny little bitch. Have you seen the picture, the famous picture that they're all referring to, with Donald Trump sitting there with his arms crossed while the rest of the world is like, what the fuck is going on here?
That's defensive posturing.
Defensive posture, look at me. People are supporting this? This is supposed to be brave. This is leadership. This is an embarrassment. This is a petulant baby who is taking his ball and going home because he doesn't get everything he wants.
It's also
and what he wants
is
to steal.
It's also what Putin wants.
It's also, I'll get to that. I will not leave that out. Also, coincidentally, exactly what Vladimir Putin wants. The so-called leader of the free world. Allies, help us. Americans, get ready to not be able to buy your BMWs or whatever else. Let's hope. Anyway, it's okay, because Donald Trump gets to go to his new besties. He could alienate all the leaders of the free world. His new bestie, you know, the sick puppy, Rocket Man. Yeah, that's his new buddy. And yes, congratulations, America. We're finally getting tired of winning. Winning, winning, winning. Boy, did we win big in this North Korea summit. Donald Trump came out of the meeting and texted, there is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. We've won! It's over! No nuclear threat! Isn't that great? In fact, the next war we have to be worried about in America is the war that's going to break out between Donald Trump and Dennis Rodman over who gets to win the Nobel Peace Prize. That's the next war that's coming, obviously. Trump or Rodman. Oh my God, walking off into history. You know, we've talked about a lot in this, what it means to be a conservative. When I say Trump did something right, I have all these conservatives saying, aha, we've won. No, you're losing 99-1 now. That doesn't mean you win. This is the NFL player, as I pointed before, whose team is losing by 30 points in the fourth quarter and sacks the quarterback and starts jumping up and down and dancing. Dude, you're losing by 30 points. You don't get to dance. But we only aspire to that because We didn't just sack the quarterback and stand up and celebrate. No, we are the quarterback. We're losing by 30 points in the fourth quarter. We just got sacked and we stand up and do a victory dance. We got our asses kicked. Who could have seen that one coming? Oh, right, everybody, including us. The jackass, incompetent negotiator-in-chief got played like a fiddle. Trump got nothing.
Can you imagine that? A businessman who's supposed to be a great negotiator settling on good faith?
You know, yeah, well, as pointed out, I think the guy who ghost wrote his book came out and said,
Tony Schwartz.
This is no surprise. This is why the guy declared bankruptcy so many times. He couldn't negotiate. He was a terrible negotiator.
Gotta put it
he
in
was
writing.
all bluster, and then he sat down at the table and was like, okay.
Gotta put it in writing.
It's really unbelievable. We got totally played. Meanwhile, we've given up war games with South Korea because President Whimsy decided to say, sure, why not? Have that. Something that North Korea has been asking for decades. By promising things, by the way, the promises we've got from North Korea, such as they are even weaker now, apparently, according to experts, than what Kim's father and grandfather had promised and gone back on in the past.
And
promised to think about.
They normally say the devil's in the details, but there don't seem
There
to be
are
any
no details. There's good news. It's a devil-free agreement. But he gave up he gave up military exercises with South Korea in return for vague promises. This apparently came as news to, I don't know who, the United States military and South Korea, who are like, wait, what? We agreed to what? The vice president's office then came out and said, no, we didn't. Oh, wait, yes, we did. Oh, I don't know. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. I don't know. We'll tell you tomorrow. We don't even know in our own government what's going on. You think this is good? This whole crazy thing? It's not good. It's not going to work out well for us. Compare this, of course, to the Iran agreement. Donald Trump had a problem with that because despite its rigorous verification procedures, the most rigorous of any agreement in world history, he said, Kim has a great personality. I guess the good news then is Donald Trump doesn't want Kim to be his fourth wife, because he described him as having a great personality, and that is not the way Trump describes his wives. He says, I trust him. I trust him. The dictator, murderous dictator of North Korea. Hey, we both hate journalists together. We both hate facts together. This is reminiscent of George W. Bush, meeting Vladimir Putin and famously saying, I looked into his eyes and saw his soul. And I guess George Bush doesn't have the instincts of a Donald Trump, who has the instincts to fill his administration with people who've all resigned or been indicted. Yeah, we don't need verification. We've got Donald Trump's gut, his prodigious butt. But why not? Because he leads a political party to whom facts do not matter, to whom negotiation consists of sending a video to the North Korean leader saying, hey, this is how great things could be. A fucking promotional video they send to the dictatorial leader of North Korea. You want me to relax and have some popcorn?
Yeah, it's a movie.
Oh, it's a movie. Oh, I don't even listen to myself. It's a sad precedent for our views. People are talking about GOP hypocrisy. The video, the delicious video of Sean Hannity saying nasty things about Obama wanting to meet with the Castros and saying the exact opposite of Donald Trump meeting with the North Korean dictator. Really? At this point in time, GOP hypocrisy is still noteworthy? They're full of shit, and their viewers, their constituents don't know the difference. You want to see a good video? Whenever it's up on YouTube, watch Chris Hayes' interview last night with Long Island Congressman, Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin. It was embarrassing. He was a deer in headlights. He couldn't answer a question. I expected him to pull a Ralph Cramden, ask your parents, humana, 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 humana. I called my wife in. I backed it up. I said, you have to watch this. This is a U.S. congressman. This is embarrassing. The best she could do is she turns to me and says, why would he go on a program like this? And the answer is, somebody told him to. Yes, normally the Republicans just go where it's safe. They go on Fox News, they go on other bullshit where they won't ever have to answer a question. My producer Damien and I are arguing about the role of media in distorting things and creating propaganda to make people so unbelievably uninformed that they would support what is happening in this country right now. And I said, I am absolutely not convinced anymore that, at least among the diehard Trump supporters, that the media is the problem. The media didn't make them bigots. They were born bigots. They became bigots. They're going to hate because that's what they do.
But you see, the first prototype for conservative radio came out in 1988 when Rush Limbaugh moved to New York. What happened the year before that was when the Fairness Doctrine was repealed.
We keep talking about the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine. And I don't think it's not having an impact on a lot of people. How did we get here? The historic meeting, people are saying, a historic meeting between President Trump and the North Korean leader. The first time an American president met with the leader of North Korea. I asked him in my class today, why do you think North Korea finally agreed now to a meeting with the President of the United States? And I took a few answers, and then I said, trick question. North Korea's always wanted a meeting with the President of the United States. They haven't been the ones who haven't done the meeting. We've been the ones who haven't done the meeting. We haven't done the meeting because they weren't serious enough to sit down with the President of the United States and to give them that kind of prestige and credibility, to build them up among their people and around the world by sitting down with the President of the United States. Trump doesn't have that kind of sense. And I guess that's what's different about this president. Russia calling the shots? Take a look at how everything in what's happened in the G7 and in Korea tends to benefit Vladimir Putin. Coincidence? Maybe. But the coincidences are really starting to add up. Paul Krugman refers to the President of the United States as an obvious quisling. Look it up. You all have homework. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We will hopefully see you again next week. Like Looking Forward, go to forwardnationradio.com. That's forwardnationradio.com and get the full experience. You'll see the video from this and every episode there and on our YouTube channel as well. Please go to our YouTube channel. Please forward our link to your friends if you like the show. Don't miss the next Forward Nation Radio podcast on Podbean at podbean.com or on iTunes. You can send those links to your friends as well. Like us on Facebook, subscribe. Thank you for your viewership, and see you next week.
You've been listening to Forward Nation Radio with David Leventhal.